happiness, the mind is quiet. You know, it's conditioned. You know, our view of it is conditioned by the stuff on either side of the happiness, basically. You know, but technically speaking, you know, the actual moments of bliss, right, are, they call it, like, for example, like sukham, right? You know, spaciousness. You know, the sort of, that's happiness. That's actual happiness. You know, people do mistake sometimes excitement for happiness, but excitement is not exactly the same thing.
So the practice also gives you that same quietness of mind.
Yes.
Which we are comparing with.
Yes. And you can, and you said bad things, right? Bad things are also reflections of the self. They're just like without the terms, like tamasic reflections, let's say. You know, they're dark reflections. Like if you have a mirror that's like pitch black or something like that with dirt, okay, and you look at it, it is reflecting you, kind of. It's just a very dirty reflection, you know. So it's also a reflection of the self. It's a polluted reflection.
So we are chasing sattvic.
Yeah, we're chasing sattvic reflections. Exactly. That's right. And you know, trying to get it without the need for something else to give it to us. You know, we're using the attention itself. Yeah. Yeah. Well, exactly. That's right. I mean, so the individual ego, which is the representative of the self in the illusory world, is structured by all these psychological factors, basically. And so when those psychological factors are agitated, let's just say, right, you get suffering. And that's, you could say, a dark reflection of the self.
So that's why the Buddha said mind is the best friend and understand. Yes,
exactly. I mean, that's the majority of this game, really. 98% of the spiritual game is control of the mind. You know, I mean, even control is not exactly the right way of putting it. It's integrating it and quieting it, basically. You know, essentially. But you have curiosity, and no, I would say, well, we don't have any willpower. I would. There's different levels at which that can be taken. Yes, ultimately, you don't have any willpower. It's true. That's the ultimate truth. But you feel like you have willpower. To the extent that you feel like you have willpower, the question is how to apply it. I do not like the kind of willpower where you're steamrolling yourself. That's true. But to whatever extent you feel like you have any control, that control ought to be used for something spiritual, or to investigate your psyche, you know, and see what's going on. Be curious about it, you know. That's what I would say. You know, and I feel like it's really, basically, does that make sense? Yeah. So yeah, it's true though. Ultimately, of course, you can say ultimately, there's no free will. That's
you
true.
have to play the game
You have to,
Mayas
yes.
to go through the
precisely.
transcend the game.
Because you feel as if you have control. So that feeling. Because if you really felt as if you didn't have control, if you really believed you didn't have control, then you would automatically surrender. You know, that would be inevitable. Like you would feel like, because non-surrender is premised. Not surrendering is premised on the idea that I'm in control. If you were completely convinced I'm not in control, you would relax, obviously. And that would be surrender.
So one thing is that, like for example, the bad habits like the procrastination, in which we are not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
So the same is like, we don't have any willpower and all, and it's just like everything is happening.
The procrastination is a perfect example. So I mean, I'm a very big proponent of good therapy, and you know, I'm a big fan of psychoanalysis in particular. But look, procrastination is a very good example. So procrastination, the typical viewpoint in society is you're a bad, lazy person. You should get yourself together, focus, use positive thinking, and like whip yourself into shape. You know, I would say that's exactly the wrong thing to do. You know, procrastination is there because there's something within you that is resisting for a reason. Why? That's the question. So, you know, it may not be so easy to discover why, it may be a bit of a mystery. So this is not exactly, you know, precisely the spiritual point, it's a psychological point. When procrastination occurs, it's because you're at odds with yourself. There's some faction within you that is not on board with what's going on. And it's your job to figure out what that faction wants and see if we can come to a more synergistic solution, you know, and bring things together, essentially. Not steamroll it.
If you have like an examination and you're preparing for the exam and
Yeah.
you're procrastinating studying it, right? So like, I mean, how do you make sense of that? Like, okay, myself is not on board with studying.
I mean, look, if it's a minor disruption, you might understand. I mean, there might be a lot of reasons why it's going on. Like, for example, right, you might not be eating right, you may not be sleeping right, you know, those kinds of things could disrupt it, right? You know, so you might be correcting those things, and you might feel better, and you might be feeling, you know, that's the reason, right? Like, so it could be something simple like that. It could be much deeper. It could be that at some level, you don't want to be embarked on this path, you know? You're going to medical school, but you don't want to go to medical school, you know? And so you're resisting, even though you're smart enough, perfectly smart enough to do it, but you don't really want to do it, and so you're putting barriers in front of your own way, right? It's for a reason, you know? That could be the case, right?
There are times where the mind says that actually if you do it, it's really good for you, but because you're procrastinating for some reason, again, the hidden reason that I don't know, but
Yeah.
the mind says that you should be doing it.
Exactly. Well, that the should is the problem, you know? That should is not going to help you. There's no should or shouldn't in this case. What you want to do is you want to say, what are the forces operating within me, you know? And how can I get them to cooperate, basically? How can I put them in harmony? Rather than trying to have one, like, tyrannize over yourself, basically. Because even if you succeed, you lose that way. You know, you lose a good part of your energies.
I don't know if it's a question or comment. I don't know. When you said the example of like medical school and following your passion, I find more and more as I go deeper on this path, it's harder not to follow what feels right or what is passion. It's almost like it's too painful just not to follow what I truly want, even if what I truly want is more scary than the alternative. It's like what I truly want, so I have to do it. And I'm wondering if you can just comment, because I think there's something really important in finding out what you really want and just doing that. And I just wondering if you have comments or thoughts on that.
Well, no, I mean, I think that's exactly right. If you can, I've long been a proponent of we want to sort of be clearer and clearer, and it's not like a one and done process, but become clearer and clearer about what we really want, absolutely, as opposed to all the things that we think we should want,
So
which are quite different, you know.
Because those are conditioned into us.
Those are conditioned into us, exactly.
Not really
right.
coming from us in
Yeah,
some way.
that's right, exactly.
And
That's
in
exactly right.
psychotherapy, for you, do you think is a big aspect of it is that that deeper understanding into what we really want, also
right.
when it comes, because
Yes.
that's the only reason we wouldn't do something is we're attached to some view or some perspective.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because I mean, often it's because we have underlying relationships that are at stake, right? Again, like parents want us to be a certain way, Take a prime example,
Right, a belief
that
that I
sure.
need to do this or I should do this, and when that belief is dissolved, then I want to do this comes up to the surface.
Yeah.
Rather than I should do this.
Exactly. And often those, I feel like often those shoulds though are coming in from loved ones,
Yeah.
because they see us in a certain way, we want them to see us in a certain way, and then we tell ourselves, yeah, we do want this, but we don't actually want it. We're lying to ourselves. Because to admit the truth would be, well, maybe I'm going to be a disappointment to my parents in some way, and that's hard to really accept,
And the reverse could also go that, right?
Parents
So-
can be disappointed with children, you mean? Is
The
that what you mean?
parents, the parents could, potentially think, oh, did I, do the, why are they
Right.
like this? Did I,
Yeah, exactly.
go up in some way or,
Right.
So-
And of course, a lot of things do come from parents, but there is, of course, also an inborn nature to everybody. People are not a blank slate. They're coming in with their stuff. People have different temperaments and whatnot. that also affects things.
So again, back to the question, practicing self. So I was attempting
Mhm.
to, practice self-inquiry or surrender while all the discussion is going on. So when the attention
Right,
is
that's okay.
focused,
Yeah.
like when I'm trying to pay attention,
Mhm.
it's,
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. So look, the whole game is, the whole spiritual piece of this is attentional control. So if you're trying to pay attention to me, then exactly, you couldn't do the practice. You have to do the practice, and then whatever is absorbed is absorbed. You see? That's better, actually. I prefer to do that, That's, even inquiry is the same thing. Because inquiry, you're looking for I, and there's, mind and body are still operational, Things are still happening. Many things are happening. And you're perfectly capable, the truth is, we're all perfectly capable of extremely complex cognition unconsciously. We don't believe it. We don't believe we have it. The belief is actually limiting, is the truth. But you have to challenge it, and be like, okay, I can be in this talk, and I'm going to do the practice, and, if I don't understand a single further word, so be it.
Okay, so that.
Yeah, that's
See,
the attitude
because
to take,
when
yeah.
I try to surrender and kind of pretend you're this TV screen,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
whatever words are coming there,
Yes.
then it becomes a blur, right?
That's
so I'm
fine,
not
that's fine.
digesting,
Let it be,
I'm
let
not
it be,
processing.
let it be,
So
let it be.
Let it
I mean,
be?
let it be a blur, because that's you're assuming it's a blur because your conscious awareness is not focused on it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that what I'm saying isn't penetrating at some level, maybe going in unconsciously.
And even if it's not,
And even if it's not, it doesn't matter. That's right.
if we go with the fear, is what we start to say, like, oh, I'm not listening, or I missed that word.
That's right.
And
That's
that
right.
becomes the
This problem is more, it will eventually be overcome because it will be seen that isn't really a contradiction in the same way that you think it is. It feels like it's a contradiction, like it's impossible to do the practice but also be listening. And again, the solution is not to try to do both at the same time. I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world either, but essentially, I think what it is there is because there's an innate belief that, I have to pay attention in order for something to be absorbed. This is all a part of this illusionary identification, right? Because of that belief, when you do the practice for a good long while, it's going to seem as if it's impossible that you could pay attention to anything else. But there will come a day when it will seem like, well, of course it can happen. In fact, it's been happening, So, yeah.
I mean, so it just felt as if they are mutually exclusive.
Mhm.
So either attention is outward or
Right.
attention is inward.
That's right.
So the
And
two cannot coexist.
that's fine. So, I mean, that's right. It's going to feel, as I'm saying, it's going to feel like that. One day it won't feel like that in quite the same way anyway. But what I'm suggesting is the practice, go ahead and put the attention inward, period. Because, from the inquiry standpoint, you would say, who exactly is it that cares whether they hear
Yes or no.
anything? Exactly. And from the surrender standpoint, you obviously surrender. But a metaphor that comes to mind, I've used it once or twice before, is it's sort of like, let's say there's a person in a wheelchair, okay? And they actually are physiologically and anatomically able to walk, okay? But they are totally convinced that they are, paraplegic, right? So, you could push them to stand and they'll fall right back down because they don't believe they can walk, even though they can actually, right? So, if you keep pushing them up again and again, or they push themselves up, right, again and again and again and again and again, eventually they're going to find their footing. But it's going to take a while because the ingrained belief, they're fighting against the ingrained belief, which is very strong, something like that. So this idea that it's mutually exclusive, because the reality is, which is so counterintuitive, is you're never paying attention to anything. You are never paying attention to anything. That's the really strange truth of things.
So who's paying attention?
Exactly. attention is an illusion. That's the answer. But that doesn't seem like it's an illusion. So, you know, it feels like I'm paying attention to things, of course. But you know, reality is it's not. It's like you know, it's like an arrow in a drawing, where the arrow indicates movement, but the arrow isn't really moving. The arrow is a symbol of movement. So that's how the mind works. It's all intimations, like, oh yeah, this is suggesting that. It's not actually that, you know? Yeah, I know, it's very counterintuitive.
One
Because-
example I remember is, for example, you are talking to someone and you are in your own thoughts, and that person sees that you are not giving attention to
Yeah.
that person, and he says, "What did I say?" And you can still say, "What did he say?"
Right, yeah, exactly.
So,
That's
so
right.
you are still
Some people are experts at this.
Yeah. So you are mutually exclusive, but your senses are sticking
Yeah.
it, and you are somewhere else, and
Yeah.
still you are.
Yeah, exactly,
That-
exactly.
that
I mean, there's
works.
so many instances you can think about this,
Correct.
right? I mean, people are walking someplace, and then 30 minutes later they're there. Like where?
Or driving.
Or driving,
Driving all
absolutely.
the
Automatic.
time it happens.
That's
How
right.
did I land here? How did I reach here? Yes.
Exactly. So all these functions happen, and so many things. I mean, the reality is, I mean, so many complex thoughts are going on underneath the surface. Like, you know, you're talking about these random thoughts that you have. Exactly.
With no
There's
attachment.
probably chains of logic that you can't see. They're under the surface. That are reasons. It seems like so like random and trivial. No. There's probably whole streams of reasons. I mean, that's what our scriptures say too. Karma is very complex. Everything has causes, okay? Very, very complicated causes. So there's nothing which is random, actually.
So not in this slice of time or whatever, but you know, who knows. I mean, it's like popcorn just popping, right? And
Yeah, that's right. That's
How
right.
do you surrender what you cannot be aware of?
Yeah, you can't. You surrender can only work in the moment on what's live. So as you practice, you know, forces are coming to try to disrupt it, right? In that moment, if you surrender, that's how you surrender. You cannot surrender stuff you can't see. You can only surrender, but as you practice and as certain things soften, other things will surface. So they go in layers like that, you know? It's like deeper and deeper sediment or something like that. Those things automatically. So you cannot surrender what's not in awareness. That's right.
Somebody, you had
Yeah.
a question?
Krishna,
So you
No, I was saying that this is because of too much thinking and not enough trust
Yeah.
in the process.
Yeah,
That's caused all the problems.
Yes, exactly. Ramana talks about this, right? People ask him this question, like, yeah, like how do you do things when you're surrendering, essentially, you know? And he says, well, this is a problem for a while, but eventually it'll be passed through.
So
Huh?
eventually that's a problem for the wife.
It's a problem, meaning it seems to be impossible to put your concentration on other things, but it'll be seen eventually if it's a non-problem, actually. Because right now it seems as if you're the controller of the attention, but in fact it's not so.
Now, you will see yourself as every year you are coming, right? You will see the difference year to year.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yes.
Another question. Since everything is illusion, right? But then there are the concepts that you were mentioning about thoughts and change of
Yes.
thoughts.
Yes.
Like, what is real then? Like the concept that you are mentioning, like change of thoughts are there. Like, do we believe that, or do we even?
Yeah. Well, no, it's a good question. Like these are provisional philosophies, basically. They're meant to guide seekers. But in the end, all these philosophies are incomplete. No matter what I say, it's all going to be incomplete. The reality is beyond language, beyond concepts. But in this game we're playing, there are certain, you know, tentative things that are, you know, there's a game. There's a game we're playing. In this game, we're using these concepts. These concepts can change, right? You know, as you go further, certain concepts may be discarded, may be altered, your perspective on things may change. But yeah, it would be wise to keep in mind they're all just concepts. Any metaphor I use is just a metaphor. It's not reality. It's not reality. It's a way of reorienting your mind so that it moves in a certain direction. but you shouldn't take it to be absolute truth. It definitely is not. So even my saying, we are pure consciousness, all of these things, these are all just concepts. The reality is not exactly any of these things.
Just to pick up from Krishna's, that
Yeah.
year by year. So is it true that on this path, there are no stage gates, by which you can measure progress? So it is here and end?
I mean, look, if you do the practice year over year, you should see some long-term trajectory things. You should see, generally speaking, increased peace of mind, generally speaking, softened attachments, generally speaking, increased duration and frequency of practice. Those three things you should generally see over time. But you could have setbacks where for a week or two or a month or three, things go backwards. But overall, that should be the trajectory, yeah. And also, eventually greater and greater insights into the self, basically. Flashes of the self. These are all.
It's a slow process. I'm doing it for 30 years, I'm still there. Nowhere.
That's very encouraging.
So I
You
have
sure
a
you're
question about surrender.
About what now?
About surrender, right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
you said that you can't surrender what you're not aware of. So
Yes.
you become aware. So you practice awareness initially,
Yes.
and you surrender what you are aware of,
Yeah.
and that's when you turn to inquiry.
No. Well, I mean,
No?
surrender itself is sufficient. You
That
don't have.
itself is
You
the
don't.
practice.
Yeah, because both surrender and inquiry are, very. They're twinned paths. They're really again two sides of a coin. Because again, inquiry is I'm looking for I. Surrender is I'm looking for not I, and I'm trying to ignore not I. And if I try to ignore not I, where does the attention have to go? It has to go towards I. There's no other place to put it, right? So you're like, I'm ignoring everything, meaning I'm bringing my attention towards me somehow, whether it's framed that way or not, right? So they're really both equal. And so something comes in, right? Let's say some demand on your attention, some demand for you to do something, and you say, I'm just relaxing, I'm surrendering, and whatever happens, happens, right? If my body and mind choose to do something spontaneously, then so be it. And if not, that's fine too, right? That's surrender. So that in that moment you've surrendered. And then you keep going like that. And you can keep going like that. You don't have to move to inquiry ever if you don't want to. You can just stay in surrender. Because as you do that, what will happen is the mind will become more and more peaceful and quiet, and the objects of your attention as a result of that will become subtler. Like your experience will become subtler, meaning it will move away from, very big, obvious concerns to subtler and subtler concerns, and less agitation to quieter and quieter states of mind. And even those quieter and quieter states of mind, ignore, right? You keep bringing your attention back, like waking yourself up, viewing every experience as this is like a dream. It wants me to fall into the dream and like lose myself in the dream, and you're pulling yourself back out. I'm not going to lose myself, be hypnotized, be mesmerized by the dream. That's surrender. And you keep doing that again and again and again, and the dreams will become quieter and quieter and quieter. Yeah.
So I'm getting this feeling of, or I don't feel it right now, but during the meditation, I felt this feeling of like withdrawing from who I think I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was resting in something, like I was just resting in the awareness.
Yeah.
And I can't explain it. It just felt like everything is resting in awareness.
Yeah. So this is a kind of a little bit of a glimpsy feeling,
Yeah.
is what I would call that. And that's great. And I would just encourage you to
But-
keep surrendering.
Yeah.
Keep surrendering, right?
It
This is a
comes and
feeling.
goes, right?
Yeah,
It's
this-
a fleeting moment.
You should view it as a feeling. You should view it as a feeling because even if that is a good feeling, and it's probably a peaceful feeling and it's an insightful feeling, but nevertheless it's just a feeling. And so what we're trying to penetrate through any temporary experience to something which is permanent.
Mm.
And so anything which comes and goes, any experience which comes and goes, must be viewed as just a thought, however beautiful it may be, and good it may be, right? But you just treat that as this is another thought that I'm ignoring it. I mean, it's nice that it was there, but I don't. Ironically, again, anyway, you know, even if you want to protect these peaceful, resting type states, ignoring it is the best way, because keeping the vigilance going and is what is going to prevent you from accidentally taking an attachment to be real, you know, and then getting sucked into it, and then you'll lose your peace of mind. So, yeah.
But can you still rest? Sometimes, you know, the mind needs the rest, and you know, you don't want to get out of that silent state.
I
So
mean,
can you reward yourself
sure.
with that rest?
It's all relative. It's all relative. It's all
That is
yeah.
attachment.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a break from the tired
Yeah,
practice.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
get tired of the practice.
See, I'm giving you, yeah. I mean, look, it's not the worst thing in the world if you do that. You know, it's not. It's
That is
nice.
out.
You can skate for a while. You can skate for a while on
Skate for a
smooth
while.
ice.
But that's-
you know?
Knowing that it's an attachment,
Knowing
but
that-
still indulge in the,
You
know,
can.
so,
Yeah. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you do that, and you probably will inevitably do that.
But it's a great point
We are observing that it's
to remind yourself that that is not the final.
Yes, it's not the final
goal, right?
destination.
That-
Exactly.
it's-
That's right.
Yeah, it's just an experience.
That's right, precisely. And people, you know, people can get like, and you should know, right? Like, you know, especially if you do start to get various spiritual insights, right? You know, there might be times when they desert you. People can get upset by that, like, oh, I'm having all these amazing spiritual glimpses, and then suddenly they disappear for a while, and they're like, hey, where did it go? You know, like, it's a lesson, because don't get attached. That's candy. You know, it's nice, it's good, but it's not the point. You know, and it may disappear to show you that it's not the point, you know?
At least you get motivated.
Exactly, it's motivated.
I did
Yeah.
something and
Right.
then I reached there
Yeah,
and I kind of understand
yeah, yeah.
that's a kind
Exactly.
of, at least, you know.
No, it is motivational, 100% it's motivational.
It's called Yog Maya.
Yeah, the Maya, the
You
Maya
are your
yoga
cities
itself.
and you are enjoying that cities,
Yeah.
which is also Maya.
With surrender, sometimes I find that if I'm going deep into the practice and it's consistent, the focus starts becoming much more about the actual practice of surrender. It's having to be surrendered, because that's actually the only kind of like the only quality of experience, because there's such a focus on the surrender. And I'm just so eventually, I think eventually we have to just keep even surrendering the practice of surrender, which I guess is a bit ironic because you're.
I would suggest not doing that. I would suggest hold to the practice, because you know, you can't really surrender voluntarily.
Yeah.
You'll have to have it stripped away, you know, and that's by act of grace. So if you can stay in that, like, I know it's going to feel like you're coming to the same thing again and again and again, but if it's a deeply peaceful state, to keep your self-awareness and keep protecting that state, even if you feel like, yeah, this is the last thing, but it's not, because the very notion that I can surrender implicitly has illusion in it,
Yeah,
right? Because, yeah, your personal doing, right? Like, I can either surrender or I can surrender, right? You already have a personal doer embedded in that way of thinking, you see, and you can't get out of that. You cannot exit that paradigm by your will. You have to wait until it happens automatically, and that'll only happen when remaining attachments are weakened sufficiently, which you can't know because you can't see the underlying hidden attachments. You might have attachments you're not aware of. You know? So, yeah, that's what I would just hold to the effort. Don't let go of the effort. Let God take the effort from you.
So, like I just have a question, it's just a joke. So, the discernment peak, like
Yeah.
detachment for everything.
Mhm.
So, life can also teach you, in the sense, you fight with everybody, you will be detached.
Right? Yeah. Sure.
Completely detached.
I mean, that's a good outcome, actually. You know, no, because some people may get into fights and then they get more and more embroiled in them.
Yeah.
You know, like that would be a bad outcome.
Yeah.
If you can start to surrender the outcomes, like, oh, like these negative things are happening, and you know, people are fighting with me, but if you can just relax and ignore, that is that's actually a very good point, right? Generally speaking, right, when bad things happen, right, these are prime spiritual opportunities because these attachments are surfacing in that moment. If you can surrender a practice during these moments, you have a amazing chance to weaken those often core attachments, you know? Often in like really painful situations.
But that is not the glimpse.
I mean, no, that's not a glimpse by itself, but it will lead to them eventually, of course, you know?
That
So
you can
when-
have
so
a
if you're
drinking
very-
also.
If you start getting very anxious about, where the world is going with AI and robots and wars and all of
Yes,
that,
yes.
what is that attachment? Is that abhinivesha? Is that just attachment to life? Is it just attachment?
Yeah, fundamentally, of course, right? So, you know, you're a person, you're living in this world, this is a chaotic world, and who knows where it's going, right? And you have family and loved ones that you care about, and maybe you also care about your country or community or something like you care about them, right? These are all attachments, right? They're all based on, I'm an individual living in this world. So, yeah, yes, definitely, right? Because otherwise, why would it concern you, right?
Yeah. So these are good opportunities for us
Yeah,
to practice.
definitely, exactly, 100%.
All this
Yes.
So, I mean, along that, the following question, something happened, particularly with all of them, and then, someone close to me was extremely affected by, this whole thing. It didn't affect me as much. So then it did make me wonder if it is, something, related to the practice, which, or is it just apathy, so sometimes, yeah, so that question did arise, oh, why am I not as affected by all this,
Well,
so am I just,
I mean,
not
look,
sensitive enough, or, so, yeah.
Would that be a question about spiritual bypass?
It
Am I
could
using
be.
the practice to bypass what I need to do?
Feeling, right.
I mean, do I need to be feeling that, such a strong emotion about, these kind of things that are, I mean, my thing is when something is not in my control, why even waste my energy, right? I mean, on it.
I think that's right.
So how am I going to change it in any way?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
by, worrying that.
I mean, I think the litmus test is going to be, these are very difficult, subtle questions because it's not obvious at all how they could be immediately resolved, right? Like, is this something which I'm in denial about, or is this a legitimate, use of the practice? And I think you have to look at the overall context of your life to come up with the answer. Like, are you functioning better or are you functioning worse, right?
Or do I surrender from that question too?
You can, of course, you can, 100% you can actually. But yes, if you're not, directly surrendering to the question, then I would say you would examine it by, look at the effects of what's going on overall, right? So, for example, one might feel indifferent, let's say, but perhaps one is actually more helpful than before, You don't have to feel like so anxious to help somebody. And you might find yourself helping even better when you're like, actually, I don't actually care that much, but, I'm peaceful, so I'll help them. You might find things going
So if
going
you
that
don't
way.
use your compassion for them, right? Like
Exactly.
apathy would be where you don't even have compassion. Like if you feel apathetic, then you're like in
I know,
denial.
like,
In denial of your feelings, then you'll deny others' feelings also.
Or if
When
it's not.
Eka was doing her bachelor's degree, so one of the things they mentioned is, for example, surgeons not to perform surgery on their loved ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect example, right? So excessive emotion can interfere, And in the Gita, for example, it's pretty specifically says, right? The wise mourn neither the living nor the dead.
Yeah. See,
You know?
when devotees are, or people ask, at least in talks and things like that, if you listen to the questions, such questions are posed to Ramana Maharishi.
Yeah.
And then, his response, first find out who's asking the
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
So there was no direct answer to
I know,
any
I
of
know.
this. First find out.
I
So
know.
it was like,
Yeah.
it was encouraged that, don't involve yourself with, these affairs of the world that are not in your control. First
Yeah.
find out.
Yeah,
who's
that's true,
affected,
that's
you
true.
know, so.
That's true. Look, if you can stick to basically, of course, if you can stick to the practice, either practice, the practices are the universal solvents, right? They apply to everything. They will, as long as you hold to the practice, you cannot be harmed. They protect you against anything, everything. But you can't hold to the practice sometimes. That's the problem. And so then what happens is the question. What's happening then? And so if you want to really examine whether something is really benefiting you or not, is this apathy or is this spirituality? One way you could say is, how does it affect the practice? Am I doing more of the practice, less of the practice? You know, am I apathetic in a way that I'm just totally turned off to the practice, or am I apathetic in a way where I'm doing more of it? You know, that may not be apathy at all. That may be a mental calmness. So these things you need to discover for yourself. But I would say that's generally a basic litmus test for everything in the spiritual path is, am I doing more of the practice or not? If it's helping the practice, it's helping you. Basically. If it's hurting the practice, it's hurting you.
So one thing is that, for example, if that has happened, then like following up with the strict surrender, like stripping off all the negative emotions, like that we know. But still, like we have to take the action, right? Like in the Mahabharata also, like
So it depends on your point of view. So, you know, again, right, the very, very strict idea is you're not the doer of your actions, actually. You're not the doer of your actions. The actions which your body and mind are destined to do will be done, whether you like it or not. And this is also said in the Mahabharata, I mean, it's said in the Bhagavad Gita, actually, specifically. You know, I like to say it's like Krishna talks about this. He says, you know, he gives this whole set of reasons why Arjuna should act. And then he says, you know, you make the decision now. And then he says, but trust me, actually you're not in control. The powers of nature are in control.
Yeah.
And God is in control. God is in control of those powers. And God has made the decision that you will, in fact, fight. Whether you like it or not, whether you think so or not, you will fight. Trust me, this is what's going to happen. So, you know, there's no actual decision, actually, really. Now, nevertheless, it feels as if there's a decision. So, you know, surrender and inquiry are challenging that feeling directly, because they're saying, okay, you feel that you have a decision to make, you have to do this. Well, either ask yourself, who is it that thinks that they have a decision to make, and find I, which is a very elusive sort of feeling, or just surrender and see what happens, you know? But if you can't do that because you're too attached, which is most people, you know, even most spiritual seekers, then they advise karma yoga in that case, right? Which is do the action with your full effort, and try to give up the results. You know, tell yourself whether it's good or it's bad, success or failure, it's not really my result, it's God's result. And even though I felt like I was doing it, you tell yourself, I'm not really the one doing it. This is karma yoga. So that's one step easier, because, you know, you can still put in what feels like your effort. But the higher, difficult thing, which, you know, again, it's not karma yoga is a very, very good thing to do. It's not always possible to do surrender inquiry. And if you cannot do it, there's no shame in doing karma yoga instead, because karma yoga will purify your mind and lead you to surrender inquiry. But anyway, yeah, I mean, surrender and inquiry are harder. They're more directly saying, no, you're not doing anything, actually. You know, you're not doing anything. You are the non-doing self. Whether you think so or not, whether you know, it's not even you that doesn't think so, actually. Even the thought that you're not the non-doing self, even that's not you. Yeah, it's really quite beautiful and strange.
One line you said when you were answering Michael's question, that surrender can only be done by the grace.
Yeah.
Can you comment more on that?
Yeah, see, when you do surrender or self-inquiry as a practice, you're doing a practice, right? So you're saying, I'm going to turn my attention in this particular way. I'm going to turn it towards I, or I'm going to ignore everything and relax, okay? Either case, you're doing something. But the starting point of this really is the idea that you're doing things is an illusion. You're not doing things. You cannot do things. It's not within your purview to do things. You're not the doer, period. That's the truth, right? So how do you resolve this? Well, the answer is, right, you're within this illusory bubble within which it feels as if you can and must do things. There's no option not to do things. Even if you do nothing, that's a choice to do nothing. So-called nothing. Sitting in one place, for example, that's a choice. It feels like it's a doing. Even relaxation is a doing. So you can't escape that paradigm by your own will. That perspective is, you're locked in that perspective until basically the attachments that hold you away from clarity those attachments have to weaken, and then grace has to come and reveal the other paradigm, basically, which we'll do in flashes. As you pursue the practice, you'll start to see, you'll have times when, oh yeah, I'm not the doer. Like you get that feeling, basically, like liberation, temporary liberation. That's a glimpse, basically, right? These spaces where, kind of like serious flow states, for example, right, where temporarily you're liberated from the burden of doership. That's a temporary perspective shift. That's a glimpse, but that's insufficient because it's temporary.
So
Is it similar to sleep?
Sorry?
Is it similar, like if somebody says, I'm going to sleep?
Yeah, right. You mean what happens in sleep? Is that what you mean?
No, for example, sleep,
Yeah.
we can
yeah.
say,
Yes.
I allow sleep to come.
Yes,
Like, I'm not doing sleep.
Yes.
I'm
yes.
going to sleep, basically.
Yes,
is
yes,
like-
right. Yeah, that's a good
It
example.
works
Yes.
in the reverse, right? If
Yeah.
you force yourself and sleep doesn't come and you force yourself,
Yeah, you
it
can't. It
goes
doesn't
in the
work.
reverse.
It doesn't
Yes.
work. That's right. So you're relaxing. You can do certain things to precipitate sleep. You're going to your warm bed and you try to relax, close your eyes, all that stuff, right? But the actual moment of sleep is precisely beyond your control.
So can we say, sorry,
No, go ahead.
just to finish
Sure,
your
sure.
thought. Okay, by now we know we are not the doer.
Yeah.
Can we say
I
I'm the
don't-
allower?
Huh?
Can we say I'm the allower?
No, that's allower. What means you have a choice there still, right?
Like whatever is
Allow.
being done by
You're
quote-unquote
surrendering.
Yeah.
You
reality.
can say you're a surrenderer.
Whatever is being done is being done. Where is the chooser? The allower. That's a choice, right? To allow or not to allow. That's also in the illusion. You're condemned to be in the illusion, that's what I'm saying, right? So, whoever feels that they're allowing or even surrendering, again, the surrenderer is an illusion. We're working within the illusion. We're working within the illusion to paralyze the
Oh, the
illusion.
surrenderer
Yeah.
is the illusion, but the act of surrendering is the sadhana.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. Precisely. It's a sadhana which pretends to be a doing, right? That's what it is, right? So you are doing this thing called surrender, or you're doing this thing called inquiry, which feels as if it's a thing I'm doing. It should feel like that. It should feel like an effortful thing, although it'll become less effortful over time. And maybe at times it'll even feel effortless. But basically, fundamentally, it's going to feel like effort. Now, that's, again, contradicting the actual truth. The actual truth is there's nobody who's really doing this thing called surrender, actually. There's nobody who's doing this thing
So that
called
itself
surrender.
is
That
sitting on
itself
the wrong
is-
foundation.
Yeah, but you have to. We have to use the wrong foundation. That's the foundation, that's the perspective we're in. So working within the matrix, how do you exit the matrix? We're pushing on the vulnerable spot. What is vulnerable spot? Vulnerable spot is self, non-self distinction. So that's the punching point. And when you've punched through, yeah.
So, in our scriptures, we have this unique classification of Jagrat, Swapna, and Sushupti, right?
Mhm.
Waking, dreaming,
Dreaming,
and
deep sleep, yeah. Mhm.
So, would you say that in the deep sleep is where the doer,
Disappears.
enjoyer disappears?
Deep sleep is one place it disappears, definitely. So, so deep sleep, definitely doership disappears there. Even experiencership largely disappears. So you can say there's very, very primitive experience in deep sleep.
So, has that become like it's more of a foundational state rather than the Jagrat? The Jagrat is probably the most disconnected state. But the
I'm not necessarily sure I can agree with that. So, it's a semantic question, okay? You can say, right, because deep sleep is darkness, you see, so it's the less complex state in a way. Waking at least has the light of sattva intervening,
Bliss.
So and so I can't necessarily
because
say
the foundation is tamas for
for
sleep.
deep
Okay.
sleep. Deep sleep is really conceptualized in Vedanta as like pure ignorance. Ignorance is bliss in this particular case.
Yes.
It's a temporary bliss.
I see.
So I don't think you can say it's built on it. Actually, I wouldn't go for that metaphor. Even though what we can say is that underlying the waking state currently, and this is what Raman and others say, is the bliss of deep sleep actually continues, but it's hidden. It's hidden by the illusory perspective. So we're trying to unhide it basically. But yeah, and that that's a reference to this idea of waking, deep sleep, a reference to this fourth state, turiya, which is the glimpsey state, basically. It's that state, and it's also referring to the self. Period. It can be both. So that state in which there is light, but simultaneously there is perfection.
So this practice of, some people have this practice of lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
What are they trying to actually do with that practice?
There's a lot of reasons for lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming, anybody who doesn't know, is when you try to get into a state in a dream where it feels like you have control. Like I'm awake in the dream or something like that. I don't know. I'm sure it could be fun, or maybe have some other psychological insights connected to it, but I don't see that it has a lot of spiritual import.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sometimes you dream of some real things going to happen.
Sure.
And
That
then
can happen.
morning you wake up with that, and then you hear some news. Right?
Yeah, that can happen. That can happen, definitely.
So just to complete so the conclusion was you do the practice
Yeah.
with the will. I
Yes.
know you are not the doer and
Yes.
the underlying thing, but if you have a grace,
Yeah.
so you directly liberated. You don't have to do the practice. That is the conclusion you say.
Well,
Grace of a god or grace of a guru or something.
well,
That's a shortcut to directly.
no.
Only
no.
if you're cooked
Yeah. See, exactly.
and baked.
So you practice. See, really, grace is intervening at every point. Okay. Even you could say, even to wish to hear about the spiritual, grace. To do the practice, grace, right? And then to do it consistently, grace, right? And then final liberation, grace again. And then the end of that process will be again the paradoxical conclusion, extremely paradoxical conclusion that none of this ever happened. This was all a lie. There was no realization, there was no ignorance, not really, this was all fictional, right? This is crazy, right? And even that is saying too much, because who even realizes that, right? That's not even that can be said,
So that means there is no appear, no disappear.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
Precisely.
that's the concept.
Yes, that's the
same
concept. 100%. That's the concept. So it's very mind bending, right? You can't. It's like one of those Mobius strips. Mobius strips where the paper is you twist a piece of paper and it's like a continuous surface. You go around it, it comes back. Anyway, it's like that, right? There's something which the mind cannot grasp. The closer you go to the heart of the illusion, which is the I thought, it's like the Maya machine. The closer you go to that, the less possible it is to understand what is going on. You can be that, but less and less possible to understand, because you can't see it, right? The seeing is your organs are being ripped as you come closer and closer. You can never see how Maya actually functions. You cannot actually see how is actually this put together. You can't see it because the seer is disassembled in the process of coming close to it.
Wait, can you say that again? The seer is...
It's just a metaphor, really, but the one who would understand, right? The one who wants to understand, as you come close, inward, right? Those pieces are being taken, essentially. The organs of understanding are being paralyzed as you come close. So you want to see, what's really there, but you can't see it because in order to come close, your eyes have to go, basically.
Eyes have to go here, ears have to
Yes,
go,
yes.
and head
Exactly,
has to go.
exactly. Yes.
Everything, you pretty much
Yes.
have to
Manobuddhya
Yes.
and in Arunachalaksham, they say, you swallowed me, right? You have to, like a salt doll, you just have to disappear in the ocean.
Exactly. You have to turn that off, because that's not the only way of knowing. That way of knowing is the way of knowing with which we are acquainted. Is that way of knowing something as an other thing with certain characteristics, right? Like, I know that couch, it has this color, not that color, this size, not that size, this history, not that history, It's this, not that. That's the dualistic way of knowing everything.
Contrast.
So, contrast, all contrast. So we rip away the dualistic way of knowing, it leaves a non-dual way of knowing, which is underlying that. But that doesn't know things in terms of propositions. You cannot say that something is the case. It's just knowing, not knowing that it's so and so.
Then again, the moment you say I know that, it becomes dual, right?
Exactly, exactly. Because the moment you speak, now you're in that terms, like knowing that. But you can't know that it's the case. You can't even say, it's said in Upanishads, you can't even say, technically speaking, it is or it isn't. Brahman is beyond is and isn't even. Those also are just dualistic terms. Exactly.
Is and isn't.
Is and isn't. They're dependent on each other. Exactly.
So, going back to that, the illusion of the I, right? I mean, the I, who am I? The self-inquiry. So it just makes, personally speaking, right? I mean, surrender, why is surrender easy? So is it, what do you say, is it a less challenging? Because when I search for the I, it's abyss. I mean, I have no idea, right? I mean, who that I, it is so elusive. I forget getting close to that I, so why is surrender then easier? Am I cheating?
Well, it might be that you're cheating. I mean, it is, I think I said this, I don't know if to you or somebody else, but I do think can be a little bit easier to cheat with surrender, to tell yourself you're surrendering when you're not really surrendering, because surrender is like relax. So like, are you keeping vigilant or not? I mean, you could deceive yourself both ways, actually, is the truth. But it's a little bit easier with surrender. But I do think it's also a matter of temperament, So, for example, some people, they need like what feels like mental activity, or they just get bored, right? And then they can't continue the practice. For them, surrender is boring.
If you're inherently rajasic.
Exactly, right, yeah. So if you have that drive for like mental movement, then this is giving your mind something to do. Both are giving the mind something to do, but the surrender is a little more oriented towards people who are like, want to relax and they don't necessarily need to think in terms of an answer to a question. They don't think in that term. They're thinking more in the terms of, I want to just get peace. Basically, it tends to be a little bit more oriented towards that, but they're both connected.
It's the other way also, right? I mean, because I'm getting so lost searching for that I'm so tired of searching for it. You can
also go back and forth, by the way, I should say, right?
Yeah,
and it's totally, you can do self-inquiry and then you get irritated and I'm not going anywhere. Now you surrender for a while and then I'm getting bored now. Let's go back to inquiry, right? What you could say, for example, in terms of rather than surrender is, who's surrendering? So you can switch to inquiry there. That would be something you could definitely do,
Both are they're both the same.
Yeah, they're both the same, really. Because if you're keeping the vigilance very strong, right, you're continuously, again, like, this idea of waking up from something that you're absorbed in, right? Again, like, you read a book or you're watching a TV show, you become absorbed in it, and then the doorbell rings. When the doorbell rings, you come back to yourself, right? So you have to imagine every experience is like that. You're being sucked in, just like a TV show. And the point is you want to ring the doorbell yourself, continuously. So you don't get sucked in for more than a second, basically. That's the idea of surrender. So it's actually quite demanding if you do it that way, I mean, it'll become easier over time, but, that continuous coming back to yourself, coming back, is requires concentration, basically. But if it's easier for you, please, usually temperamentally, for whatever reason, one or the other is easier for some people.
I just feel because, I mean, I would prefer, to find the I,
Sure.
So, but, finding that I, and it sounds so easy when you read about it, that I that arises, when you wake up, finding that it's it's really elusive, right? At least that's been.
It is. It definitely
and
is.
so, how far, where does it arise from?
Yes.
So whence am I? Where am I? Who am I? These kind of questions, right? So, and then it becomes just an intellectual question. Who am I? Whence am I? all those things, and then after that, but actually, you're supposed to. Well, again, I'm coming to.
Exactly. No, you're right. You're right. I mean, and that's why I emphasize, right. Your landmark is your own personal experience, fundamentally. You know, it's not these questions. Questions are prompts.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting
Exactly.
with something. You're starting with something you're touching. It's like you're touching
Exactly.
the chair. You're touching it all the time. Actually, it's not a bad metaphor, because if you touch something 24/7, you would not feel it anymore. You would have no contrast. It would just be behind you. Totally lose it, right? It's like that. It's like you're touching something all the time. So you have to try to go back to that. I know I'm here and I experience this I am here-ness all the time. What is that experience? That's. But yeah, I mean, you're
But
right.
it's more than
Yeah.
finding what is that experience
Of course.
is the challenge.
Of course, it is a challenge. But some people are more enamored of the riddle than others. But you're right, it is a challenge. And again, I would just remind you that the obstacles to clarity are the attachments. So continuity of the practice is what will open up these walls. Because as you continue the practice throughout the day, the attachments come, you try to maintain it during these different times, the attachments weaken and insight becomes easier. So that's what I would say to that. But if you maintain surrender, the same thing will happen,
This is not an intellectual exercise.
Yeah, it's not.
Not
Your intelligence
exactly.
is your barrier actually. If you say that
Exactly,
you can
that's
figure it,
what.
that's a wrong approach.
And so that's why it is hard, right? I mean, when to get the
If you become
intellect
dumb, then it will become clear.
out, then it become.
Yeah.
Well,
Innocent.
Yeah, Akilesh, I have one question.
Sure.
So a few weeks before, right, continuously thoughts were flowing.
Uh-huh.
The last 1 week, the flow of thoughts is reduced,
Uh-huh.
and the inquiry, like what you mentioned, right, in that process, right, we get lost in that process. The less thoughts. Where do I anchor myself when I don't have a lot of thoughts?
Yeah. Well, when
the
you're
flow-
doing inquiry or when you're doing surrender?
both. I don't know what to do. Okay, when they have less thoughts, and I could not even proceed forward on that inquiry mode. I need some reference point, or I need somewhere to anchor myself.
Well, so what's the problem with just looking for who's experiencing this lack of thoughts?
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Like you're still there. Now you've noticed, last week I had so many thoughts, now very few. But you're still experiencing that, right? You're still here seeing that you have few thoughts. So where is you in that situation?
Okay.
You have that experience, the self-experience
Correct.
of existing.
Mhm.
That's the case in any situation. So you're just trying to reorient towards that. That's the anchor point, basically.
Okay. Continue to explore on that direction.
Yes, continue to try to feel yourself. Where is again, right? Again, we use this word all the time, right? I. But that's another. Actually, it's not a bad approach to self-inquiry. Just to ask yourself, when you use the word I, what do you yourself mean by that word? What do you mean by I when you use I?
No, but that's the sense that you have to get, and that is the hard part.
It is,
Without
I
the
know.
intellect coming into the picture, that sense of
Yeah.
the I, that is the, what he was referring to as the experience, and that is a challenging part.
It is a challenging part. But do you see what I'm saying? Like clearly, when you use the word I in your thoughts, like I have to go to the grocery store, whatever it is, right? You have some notion of what that means.
Mhm.
Like, what do you mean by it? You should ask yourself that. Like, what do I mean when I say I'm going to the Bahamas next month? Like what do I mean by that?
Yeah.
But is-
But then that's an answerless question, right?
No, is it? Do I mean my body? Do I mean my mind? Is that what I mean by that? Is
No.
it like,
So I'm past all that. I know
Okay.
enough body. I know. I mean,
Yeah,
so
well-
it's kind of I'm stuck in
But
the.
what I'm trying to say is, you say you're not the body, not that, but you must mean something by it, right? So
And it is
you
the
know,
what. Yeah.
what is it that you mean?
Exactly.
Like when you use the word again, right? It resonates with something,
Mhm.
right? I get it. It is a mystery, and you are going to run up against a wall. That is exactly the case. I mean, that is definitely the case.
But even if we say
yeah.
I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not the intellect, Sometimes there are some other maybe vasanas in action
Exactly.
that are
Of course.
actually contradicting that
100%.
belief.
Of course, 100%.
And that
exactly.
becomes an obstacle, right?
That's right.
That unseen vasanas.
Yes,
that-
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Unseen
Definitely.
Maybe that's what you're
That is the
getting at.
main, yeah,
That's definitely the
that's the
case.
one that's stopping, the tracing of this eye, like, yeah.
But I just mean like, it's I mean that's for some people it helps to think about that, like to think about how you yourself are using it, because if you start investigating it, you might be like, it's full of contradictions. the way you yourself are using it doesn't make any sense actually, right?
Yeah.
And that itself can help you. Like I actually mean, because you see, again at root, right? This is all based on the idea that at some level you do have an intuitive knowledge of this. It's covered over by a stack of other stuff, right? But at some level, if you didn't know it, we couldn't teach it to you. So, you couldn't come to it. Like, it has to be, that knowledge has got to be there somewhere. So, that's why you look at your thoughts about I and like, what do I mean by that? What do I myself mean by that? It can be a way of coming to that. But anyway, basically, it's a struggle. It's definitely a struggle.
And it's kind of, when this is like, it's been only 2 years. So initially, when I was, trying to do self-inquiry, I thought I was searching for the real I.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
It
A
took
common
me a
mistake.
while to realize I'm searching for the false I.
Exactly.
I mean, the
Precisely.
elusive I.
Exactly.
So it took me a while to get that.
But that's progress.
And now
yeah.
I'm okay. Oh,
Oh, yeah,
okay.
of course, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. You're not looking for the big self directly. You're looking for the small self, which is what feels like you right now. But what feels like you right now feels like you because of its association with thoughts. When you systematically search out I, it will be stripped of those association with thoughts. When it's stripped of those sufficiently stripped away of association with thoughts, it will no longer be the small I. The same small I, which when in association with other thoughts is a small I. When disassociation with those thoughts is the big I.
Is the big I.
Yeah.
Correct.
So the small I is what, thoughts and feelings? Is it the small
No,
I?
The small I is
The ego.
a structure of feeling like you're an independent entity. It happens. It's like an optical illusion.
Is that a projection? Is that a projection of big I?
Yeah. I mean, you can say that philosophically, right?
Comes
The
from
big
the same
I,
source.
the big I projects itself through a thought. That's what they say. It's the metaphor. Yeah. It's ultimately nothing. Everything is the big I, really. Ultimately, right? There's nothing that's not the big I.
Say it
But
again. What you told me. Sorry, I lost.
You are surrendering?
No, the small I. Small I.
the small I is the sense that you have of being a person, like a being right now, actually at all. Of being, your sense that you exist right now is the small I. Yeah. And it feels like that because it's actually a constellation of other thoughts, really, you might say. It's a structure between these thoughts.
So someone had given a thing that's kind of resonated with me, so this small I, apparently it is, it doesn't have its own independent existence. It comes from the big I. The moment, and it needs thoughts and external objects for its sustenance. So the more it starts going outward, then it grows, like
grows,
it's
right.
like, it becomes a monster.
Giant, right?
Yeah.
Monster. So when you kind of withdraw it from all those, it needs alambana, it needs all these, anchors, for it to even survive and grow, become a monster. So if you withdraw from all that, so that metaphor kind of, so how do you withdraw from, okay, you start sensory, this and everything, and, slowly minimize, all the things it's sticking to, so.
Yeah. You have to see it, you have to basically weaken the underlying desires. Because those desires are desires for happiness, one way or the other, from the world,
So
right?
I have a
That's what
follow-
generates the thoughts.
I have a follow-up last question.
Sure, sure.
So when I'm searching for whether it is a small I or big I, right? I need those vocabularies and then language to what to search, how to search, basically, right? I need those languages. I'm not mind. I'm not thoughts. I'm not feeling. Like that, I need more.
Okay, in that case, I would say turn to the scriptures then.
Scriptures.
Look, I would say start with Talks with Ramana Maharshi.
Exactly.
Okay.
Read it, because it's like a satsang with him.
Or, there's, I have a bunch of books, I'm happy to, so there is just, things on, question and answers on, this inquiry and everything, paths for self-realization, something like pointers to self-realization. That was,
The thing is,
Yeah,
what we
I
are
just
trying
have
to
a
search
question.
by words cannot be searched by words. That's the real thing. What I understood.
So what
words,
is that?
the words we are trying to search for cannot be searched by words.
Yeah,
Cannot be
that is true.
explained
That's
by
true.
words.
At the same
Intellectual
time,
words are just words.
Yeah,
They
no,
cannot
no,
be-
no, but some,
But
you
the
need some
beginning you need.
Some level, right?
Some
Some
scaffolding.
So
Right.
in this part, what I found is that okay, Vedanta and all, like what it
Yes.
helps a little bit, but this is a different. This is a lot simpler. You don't need all the scriptures. That's what I found because I was getting lost in Upanishads.
That's some people need more scaffolding than others. So
Yes.
So if you want more scaffolding, I would say definitely start with Talk Ramana Maharshi. That's the simplest thing to do.
So I just
go
have
ahead
a
now.
question. Like I feel that the discernment, I feel when there is strong devotion,
Uh-huh.
you feel that you are completely disconnected from everything and a strong emotion like anger or strong dejection.
Mhm.
Like that, those kind of, in other words, some of these strong feelings create the discernment that I do not belong to anything, everything.
The strong feelings
extreme
create that, or the disconnection from them creates that?
Like
Devotion.
at
creates
that moment of the strong devotion,
Yeah.
I feel that I'm totally disconnected.
Yeah. Okay.
So like that, at the moment of I'm so angry, or I'm so dejected, I'm so disappointed.
It can temporarily.
So that time I feel that
You're
I
disconnected.
know that I'm not in this space at all. Like,
Yeah. That can
I mean,
happen.
what I mean, that's
Yeah.
I feel
Sometimes it can
the
happen. like that.
connection of
Yeah.
some kind of glimpses with these kind of
Yeah. Sometimes it can happen. That's
strong,
true. That's
strong
true.
devotion. So if you do, for example, 8 hour, 12 hour, I chant and all, then after that, you have some different energy.
Sure.
And when the chant means it's not fully focused.
Yeah.
Then at that end of it, like sometimes you get some kind of.
Yeah, that's true.
feeling.
Sometimes, so a lot of things can lead people to temporary glimpses.
Yeah.
Sometimes very, very strong emotions can do it. Tragedies can sometimes do it. And sometimes strong devotion can do it. I'm sure chanting can sometimes do it, definitely.
And when you go to funeral and all,
Right.
like,
Sometimes.
Yeah,
There's no
that's
rule
a-
like that, but yeah, sometimes you can have some dissociative experiences that are glimpsy, basically, from these kinds of things, definitely. Uh-huh. Go ahead, you go ahead.
I have two questions. One is back to the conversation you were just having about we're trying to find the small self, not the
Yeah.
big self.
Yes.
But in some way as well, it ends up where the thing that we're feeling as I, although we're looking at what I feel like right now, which is the limited individual, it's being pulled by the big self. So in some way we're it's not wrong necessarily to say that we're not looking for the big self, but it is the big self
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we're orienting towards.
Yeah, right. Because
Okay,
because
to
that
make sure I
100%. Because like I said, like the small self
In
is
the
a
end,
small
it is
self.
the big self.
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
The
yeah.
small self is a small self when in connection with thoughts.
Yeah.
When stripped of the connection with thoughts, it's the big self.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
And then the other question was with glimpses.
Mhm.
Yesterday you mentioned the butter.
Yeah.
For those that weren't there, like a butter man in a block of butter then wants to say there's a man or a block, it's just all butter.
Yeah.
And then other things like today you mentioned like the sense of doership going away.
Yes.
So these different flavors and angles and textures
Yes.
to these glimpses.
Yes.
From the perspective of someone who's realized, my understanding that it's not just like any of those glimpses continuous, because
Correct.
that's a state. So then what is the relationship of these particular flavors of glimpses to truth if in the end they're not actually direct correlates of it?
Well, the reflections of it is what it is. So the reflections give you, ultimately, what is this final act of grace? Final act of grace is, it's the recognition that the image is you in some sense, and that is, it's accompanied by the stripping away of this so-called illusion. I say so-called illusion because the illusion is illusory. It's not even really there. Not even really there as an illusion, actually. It's not even really there as that. So some very subtle, inexplicable thing goes on, right? That's what moksha is basically, and that is coming from the mind glimpsing the truth in a sort of mirror, in the mirror of itself, so to say. You know, the glimpse is this like perfect, pure image of the self, but it's an image of the self. It's an image of the self. It's not the self. It's an image of the self. So you know, in psychology, they have this idea of like the mirror test for little kids. You know, there's a certain age at which the kid starts to realize the person in the mirror is not another child. It's themselves. You see, that's a cognitive development. At a certain age it comes, not before that, right? Same kind of thing, right? We're looking at the image, and if it's a glimpse, it's a really perfect sattvic image of perfection, basically. We're swept away by it, you know, temporarily. But the penny has to drop that somehow that is us. Even saying that is not exactly right. It's who, you know, you could immediately ask. But some kind of further thing has to go where you're not, it's not just but yeah, that's where it is. So it's a reflection, which is seen, and when the attachments are weak enough and grace intervenes, then it propagates a structural change in the mind.
And that structural change, once that takes place, what was seen as glimpses before may or may not appear in the same texture from the relative vantage point.
I mean, sure, yes. I mean, again, relative vantage point. What is a relative vantage point?
Yeah.
So see, yeah, so that's the problem, right? Because when we talk about the structural change, then immediately we're stuck in contradiction immediately, because the structural change is there's no structural change, there's no perspectives, blah blah blah, right? We're immediately in the unspeakable. So you can't say what continues or what doesn't continue. Really speaking, we only lie about it, you know.
You said the structural changes.
Structural change in the mind. See, basically, there's the so-called veil of Maya, right? Avidya, right? What is avidya? Avidya is impossible to say what it is, actually. I mean, the closest I think you could say is, if it exists, which it doesn't really exist, it is a very, very exceedingly subtle mental structure. You know? So that structure is removed. But it's like removing something that wasn't there to begin with. It's like that.
Again, there also the same.
Yeah, they're the same thing, exactly. yeah, exactly.
One way to summarize the whole thing was, if I can, what I understood, as a seeker, this self-inquiry will continue going on because you are still trying to find the self. The only thing in this path is the glimpses or the experiences you will get. Because this self-inquiry will never end.
Increasing peace.
There is no end, I am saying.
Oh.
Keep
Yes.
There is no end, right? It's infinite loop.
Yes.
And in that loop, you are just seeing the glimpses or the experiences. That is the whole journey which you are.
Well, no. You'll see the glimpses, and then eventually, once the attachments are weak enough, you'll go beyond that somehow.
But still, the search continues.
No, the search will stop at that point. Yeah. So because once the avidya is cut through, there's nothing to search for anymore.
Yeah.
And
Once you see
people who have
yourself.
search has stopped is like Bhagwan Rama.
Exactly.
All people.
Yes, exactly. But you know, again, it's paradoxical to talk about it because you know there's no search to begin with, really. So I mean, that's getting caught in this loop.
Come from that structure, no structure.
Exactly.
But you look at everything without structure. A different mental.
You can't even say that, right? So there's a problem. You can't talk about it because see, time, cause, effect, all of these things are within the wrong perspective. So you can't say what happened when things happen. Happenings are within the egoic perspective. But when you break through the egoic perspective, you can no longer talk about anything happening. You cannot talk about realization. You cannot talk about ignorance. You cannot talk about somebody who is realized. These are all artifacts of the egoic perspective. So what happens after? There's no after that. See, the problem is that you cannot say after that because after is itself in the egoic perspective.
There's no before, there's no after.
There's no before, no after. I mean, you can speak in lies. The reality is, but you know that's the truth, right? It's there's only false. You only say false things about it, really.
I have a very simple doubt. So for example, if someone wants to like strengthen their practice and all,
Yeah.
and if they're trying to ignore the thought, or the thought comes back again,
Uh-huh.
then that will mean you are attached to it. So maybe we can use like chanting as an anchor point. Is it okay or like?
So, it depends is the answer. So you try to ignore something, it keeps coming back and bothering you and bothering you and bothering you. Okay, if that happens, then my immediate instinct is to say, there's something in your mind that has to be dealt with. And, for me, the first line of recommendation is always therapy for this. But look, it's not the only thing you can do. Yeah, you can use chanting. There are other things you can do. You can see how they help you, Like, again, you kind of have to analyze, what is this thought? It's not, every thought is not the same. What thought is coming up again and again? Why is it coming up again and again? What message does it have for me, And can I adjust my life in a way where this thought is quieted? You can do that,
Then we are multiplying the thoughts, right?
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily. It depends. You're integrating them sometimes. Because if you're living in a way which is inconsistent with what you really value, and you start to recognize, oh yeah, I'm living in a way which is not really the way I want to live, and then you start adjusting that, the mind will calm, to some extent, at least, yeah.
So like nobody asked, he's asking, nobody asked anything over Zoom.
Oh, on Zoom, yeah, I don't think anyone's asking, I don't think anyone's asking anything. Are there any questions on Zoom?
I've got one question.
Yeah, go ahead,
Just like you said, just like analogous to how, as you said, in other cases, self-inquiry is, it's kind of maddeningly trying to search for I.
Yeah.
In that same way, sometimes I feel like coming to alignment with myself psychologically, as you said, and living in accordance with your real values and your real desires, I find that just as tricky, actually.
It is.
It is, and that's just as mysterious in some ways.
True. I mean, I would say, it is very mysterious. It's not, I would say, it's not just as mysterious. You really can make serious moves in that direction. It does take a lot of time and effort. It's not simple. I definitely agree with that. It's not straightforward. It can be very complicated. It depends on the person. Some people are extra complicated. Very true. Yeah. So it's not easy at all, but it's definitely worthwhile for sure. I would sort of analogize it, right, to like it's like, if we're looking in the mirror for the reflection, perfect reflection of the self, right? You can think of surrender and self-inquiry perhaps as there's different metaphors and mixing now here, but you can think of them as polishing the mirror, let's say, right? But maybe it's difficult to polish the mirror if all the objects in the mirror are like changing really, really fast, There's like, it's reflecting a whole bunch of random things that are moving quickly, right? You can't even focus to clean the mirror properly, right? So then if you can calm those things, now it's easier to clean the mirror. So that would be more like the physical or psychological levels of things. And then, but yeah, it's definitely, no question, those things are not simple at all either. But they can be very helpful.
Yeah, and sometimes I get these, maybe you could say, again, egoic or intrusive thoughts that, alright, I'll just push forth my way in spirituality and try to do self-inquiry all day, and somehow, by God's will, my life, the whole question of living in alignment with yourself, according to your true values, that'll just be taken care of somehow, and I don't have to put too much attention to it, and I can just lazily, spiritually bypass my way through, like bulldoze my way through all my obstacles and self-inquiry. And I really think that's an escapist approach because it never seems to work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Exactly, that's the whole problem. If it were possible, then it'd be great. But unfortunately, you'll find yourself. It's just like this, Shiva's bow, right? Which only Rama can pick up. Like it's there, In theory, all you have to do is pick it up, and you have you have everything you wanted. But only Rama can pick it up, So that's because it's the same thing with inquiry and surrender, right? Like in theory, if you could just surrender all the time, you're instantly done. You have liberation right there, finished. But you can't do that. You're unable, literally unable to do it. That's the whole problem.
Brahma Vidya.
Ramana, get Brahma Vidya that way, yeah. Exactly. And Ramana says that too. He says, like, yeah, if you could just crush all your desire for anything else, just in 1 second, then you've finished, done. But you can't, people don't have that. They don't have it in them to do that, unfortunately. They are way too attached, basically.
So in that case, for people like me, therapy and other kinds of psychological work is a necessary, like an integral part of the spiritual search.
Yeah, I think so. That's right. All right, let's do 10 more minutes of practice together. So one thing I just wanted to clarify really quick is in response to your question, about chanting. I just wanted to say, right, apart from investigating why a thought is coming up again and again, there's nothing wrong with chanting, and there are many exercises that can quiet the mind. And if the quieter mind is more capable of undertaking the practice, so if chanting helps you, by all means do it. I will just say that.
Yes, I have some observation.
Come.
I thought opening your eyes and doing it gets you closer to reality.
Yeah.
And also really lot good opportunity to pull your mind from say outside object as well as the connection, the memory,
Yes.
past experience, everything.
Yes.
So that means a lot of opportunity to pull your mind and practice.
Exactly. No, it's a very good point, and I haven't really emphasized it this week nearly as much as I have in the past. But I often recommend when you practice, even sitting down, that you practice with your eyes open, because if you're going to try to carry it into the rest of your life, nothing wrong with eyes closed practice, to be clear, but it's a little bit more preparatory for trying to use it in other places, if you have your eyes open. So you can take it for what it's worth. Nothing wrong with eyes closed either, but if you're going to try to do it at all times, then doing it eyes open prepares you better for that. You're right, and even just the visual stimuli alone pulls you.
And then also the senses.
Yeah.
Disconnection from senses, memory, great.
That's right.
Connection.
That's right. Exactly.
I have one question. I can understand this. The last week.
1 second, Donna. I'll get back to you just 1 second. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Donna.
Yeah, I just had a comment because I've been listening to you. I realize on one level I understand, and I can, surrender my will to God's will.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I also don't like this, this separation, this dualistic talking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure, I can't put my finger on it. I'm not quite sure what this, I understand, as a practice, from the, ego has a lot of wills, right, has its own. And of course, the practice is to surrender ego's wills. But at the same time, it's just, I don't know, I don't feel, whenever I think about God's will versus my will, I get a sense of unease, and that disturbs my peace. So, just wondering what to do with that.
Well, can you elaborate what exactly gives you that unease? Do you have a sense?
Yeah, it kind of goes goes kind of deep, where I probably don't even know. Sometimes I think, if I were God, would I create this? What's this? To me, it's all just a big fuss. What's going on? That's. And at the same time, I'm right, there's just like so much brilliance, this whole creation, whatever it's fight or war or, famine or, just wealth, health, just like so much brilliance in that creation.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's all a big fuss.
Right.
That kind of a feeling.
Yeah, I think that's natural, and that's one of the big drivers of the spiritual quest in the first place is, why is this all the way it is, basically? Why not some other way? And why is there anything at all?
Mm-hmm.
And those questions are all rooted in the illusion. So if you want the answers, you have to penetrate the illusion. Those are perfectly legitimate senses of unease. They're existential questions, basically, and that is rooted in the idea that this world is as it seems, that this world is not as it seems. And if you want the answers to your questions, find out who's asking them. That's what it comes down to, because that drives everything. there's an initial, point from which all these questions arise. If you can penetrate back down to that point, and that point is I, then the questions will resolve themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll keep practicing.
Deep practice, exactly. That's what it all comes back down to.
Okay, thank you.
You had a question?
Yes, I mean, the giant thoughts and feelings which I used to have a few weeks before, it just get quietened just because of the satsang alone, right? Always that's been the case, right? The interception comes only from the satsang, right? How do we make out of this? Okay, any amount of japa or meditation or yoga, nothing works out. Only the satsang alone makes a difference. How do we make out of that? What does that mean to me? How do I use this as a reference? Huh?
Should I more satsangs?
No, I can understand that.
What's the meaning of that? Why? You're saying? It's a good question. Where other things don't seem to help you, huh? I mean, it might be part of the way your particular mind works, your particular karmas, or but
I mean, what do I take?
What do you take from that?
Right.
I mean, literally, I do think the answer is understand. It's something you have to understand about yourself. So, if satsangs help you, then I was joking, but I'm kind of not fully joking. If they are something that help you quiet your mind, then you could attend more of them. That's not a bad thing, actually.
The truth comes
Can I answer it from a
Sure, go ahead, please.
psychology perspective? Satsang meets some of our attachment needs, relational needs.
That's a great point.
And that once those needs are met, that helps the mind calm.
Yeah. That's a beautiful way of looking at it.
Say it again.
So this is just theoretical, right? You have to see whether this is applicable to you or not. But as humans, we have relational needs. We have the need for attachment, for relation. And sometimes our nervous systems are co-regulated when we are in satsang. Basically, satsang is a way for us to create this atmosphere where we co-regulate each other's nervous systems. And some people would respond to that.
Maybe for you, it doesn't work for me that way, right? I go to a lot of temples and functions, festivals and other things, okay? That doesn't cut it out for me.
No, that won't.
That won't.
But this is unique. This is a unique relational space.
What is that?
Yeah, it's a unique relational
it's not
space
like a bhajan,
that's
it's
meeting
not
some
like
needs. That's meeting some needs that
Like Alcoholics Anonymous.
Huh?
Like Alcoholic Anonymous.
Yeah.
Come together to get rid of the alcoholism.
Yeah, it helps for sure.
Bhajagovindam, he says, starts with satsang. Right? That's what he says.
Yes.
And another thing is, like I have to bring this, Brahma Sutra. Swamiji was saying, right? So Shankara believed in argument and the intellectual talking and then getting the mind cleared. Clarity then comes only through the argument and several things, several perspective, you get it, and finally truth emerges.
I'm not beyond that literally.
I just wanted to say that when I sit with jnanis, or it's the exact same quietness and feeling as if I'm in Arunachalam. And I think just sitting with people that have this wisdom does something. I'm just sharing my perspective. Because for me, in satsang, it's the same. It's very intense and quite different to any other thing.
But it's temporary, right?
It's a temporary.
The moment the satsang
it's helpful.
leaves,
It's not going to be your cure-all, but it definitely will have an effect.
I mean, for resetting, right? I mean, for recharging, for resetting and everything.
But it may take it further.
Exactly. It's adding something. It's definitely nourishing something.
Slowly cumulative.
Your perspective.
And Ramana says this, by the way. You probably know better than me. I mean exactly where he says it, but he says, the Guru's grace is the most supreme mind-quieting thing there is, basically. So, why go through these painful scriptures and different things? Just go to the Guru and enjoy the grace from there, basically. So you're onto something. But it's good to understand. See, I think you have to understand.
No, I understood. I used to travel to Tiruvannamalai regularly. But even I don't get that.
Even that.
Okay, even I don't get that. Even I go to the backside and then meditate and all. But the satsang turn
Particular.
particular.
One thing, at least we both were discussing, me and Shahida, once that from our experiences till now, one thing which has worked for us is whenever you are in a knowledge, you get out from your suffering. That I have seen.
Good point.
Whenever
Good
you are
point.
in knowledge, either from a guru, either from Acharya like Akilesh ji or Swami ji or anything, whenever we come to knowledge, that suffering or pain or whatever the lack is just goes away.
Temporarily though.
Temporarily. But once you remind that knowledge, again it goes away. That is also working. Like today we understood. When he's not here for the rest of the year. 3 months later, if you just remember or see his recording, again it will.
Not really.
move
It don't come that much. So, see, the presence of the Acharya makes a difference.
That is also grace.
When Ramana Maharshi was there, when he's Ramana Maharshi, no kidding, when he's there, even after 75 years he's passed away, but if you go to Tiruvannamalai, you go to that room, you feel it there. After all these years, you still feel it.
You feel it
Yes.
perhaps because you were immersed in his teaching.
Yeah, because, yes, I know him because I am so fond of that
No.
talks.
So you
No, but
beneath layer
even
notice.
someone who's not immersed.
Yeah.
So for me it was very new, just 2 years back
Like,
and 2-3
there is
years
some
back,
energy.
and then
There's
there is
energy. Yeah.
something, and again he says, right, I mean the guru, how do you, I mean only when there is something happening in you, the guru comes, right? I mean there are many gurus and everything, so the guru comes when, and it took so many years, and so that, I mean in my opinion that was
Yeah. Like even
That's-
when you go to
That's the ancient saying. When the student is ready, the teacher will come.
Yeah.
Exactly what it says.
But until then, you have to
Exactly.
follow the karma. Karma takes you. You have to,
Exactly.
yeah, see,
going
for
to
some
so
of the
many- yeah.
17th century theorems and all, so much
Yes,
energy.
yes, yes,
And
exactly.
some
Whenever the
songs
student
is,
is ready.
Raghavendra Samadhi, you get lot of energy. I went to RCC, then lot of energy. Some houses you enter, you feel the energy. And some guru or saint is there, and I was parking the car, there itself I felt the energy, like that. You feel it, right?
There can be energy in different places.
Right.
That's why, again, it can be helpful. Holy places, going to holy places definitely can be
Yeah.
helpful for people, 100%.
Some energy emitting, and then it
Definitely,
stays with
you know.
you for some time.
But, if you find helpful, you should note down and, use it, definitely, definitely.
And likewise, the Upanishad reading, when the peak reading comes, where the self realizes, automatically
Correct,
you feel
correct.
the bliss.
Mm.
You feel that sudden, complete calmness. Nothing, no methods followed.
See, so if you feel that perhaps more, like you were saying, more ideas would be helpful in your particular case.
Correct, correct.
So turn to the scriptures. Turn to talk to the scriptures. Turn to talk to Ramana Maharshi, like Gita, talk to Ramana Maharshi. You can't go wrong with those two as a beginning, for sure.
Or you are associating with something, maybe like Krishna, name of Krishna itself will shed tears for some people, like that.
All right, well, let's call it for the night. Thank you all so much. And,